Welcome to Brand Fortress HQ podcast. This is another Tactics Tuesday. And what we're going to be talking about today is really diving in on the post-purchase process and customer engagement, everything from inserts to QR codes to NFC tags, all those important things that we all know in building a brand where you really have to have a connection with your customers. So we're talking about how you do that in the world of Amazon and kind of beyond. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, actually, because this is a conversation that we were having a little chat about. And so if you can kind of give some perspective as far as the conversation that you were having and how that connects with that post-purchase engagement for customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big part of the conversations that we have internally and on previous episodes. Mike has built such an incredible post-purchase system. And it's been iterated on so many times, like even down to how to get people to scan the QR code and where to put that QR code. So, I work with some brands. One question that a brand that we're getting ready to launch on Amazon is how do we get the contact information from the people that are buying our product on Amazon? And there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that people have tried to do that. And I like Mike's method so much that the conversation that I had with Mike was, how can I implement the way that you basically have to interact with that QR code? How can we do that with this type of a product? So that was kind of the start of the conversation. Is where can that QR code go? But then also on the backside of that, it's not a brand that works well. It's not a type of a product that works well with a warranty. It's bottled water. That's what the brand is. So like, there's no warranty to add to anything like that. So really, it was kind of kicking the ball around on some ideas of how do I incentivize people to give us their email address for a brand like that, where it's mostly a commodity, and it really comes down to the audience building. Like, what are the types of things that are important to that audience, and how can we help the brand build a community around the audience that they're targeting? So that was how the conversation started with Mike.
Okay. And I think this is a great way to approach this in the sense of, there's not a one size fits all. So, we've talked quite a bit about Mike's process, and a fantastic process he's built using the warranty as one of those incentives for building that audience and being able to engage with them. But it kind of depends. Every brand's a little bit different. And, we talk about it in the after purchase blueprint course that we have, where we offer a few different ways that you can, build an insert and kind of build that customer engagement based on what's available for your brand. And I think, especially looking at that of like, what are customers really going to care about, and maybe even combining a couple of things sometimes is what it takes in order to get that engagement. So I'm curious, Matt, did you guys come to any conclusions based on, kind of the ideas that you were kicking around?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talked about, it's a conservative themed bottled water brand. So the water is not anything special. It's just, reverse osmosis water, but there's funny sayings on the water bottle that are very Republican or conservative themed. So one of the things, they have this kind of funny, like a trigger spray that actually fits on the top of the water bottle. That's one of the things it's for them, it was just kind of funny. That's one of the whole things about that Democrats are easily triggered, I think, is the whole joke around that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really cheap product that you can screw to the top of the water bottle, and it's funny. So that was one of the things is, what can we offer as a lead magnet or a free product? That's one of the things that people have used in the past for a way to get email addresses. So that was one of the ideas that we have. That's something that they already have access to. They already have these triggers. The other thing that we were kind of talking about is, one of the things that Mike does is a giveaway. He does a monthly giveaway, and he uses that as one of the ways that people can get more entries into the giveaway is by inviting other people and those kind of community type building things. So that's the other thing that we kind of started at that very started the conversation. Like what are the types of things that we can give away or include in a giveaway that matters to this? Their avatar are millennial conservatives. That's really who they want to target. So, again, and this is something that we talk about a lot, is a big part of being able to do things like this is really understanding who that consumer is. And that's kind of what I walked away from that conversation with Mike on, is that I really need to start learning more about conservative millennials, because I'm obviously not a conservative millennial. So like, what are the types of things that are important to that person? So that's really kind of what I walked away with from that conversation with Mike, is it's time for me to dig into who that person is, what's important to them, what kinds of things could we use as an emotional trigger to get them to give us their email address. So just basic brand building. And I think this was a topic of conversation just a couple of weeks ago, is just how important it is to really understand who your consumer is.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there's some interesting points there. I'm curious, it's got my head spinning as far as, I wonder if you did, some sort of like, funny stickers or, bumper stickers or something like that, where it's not super expensive for the brand, but it's something tangible that the customers, that's kind of like a value add.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think too, like one of the things, and this is something that oftentimes when I'm having a conversation with an Amazon seller who maybe has, tried inserts and it didn't work, or doesn't think it will work, whatever, is that it doesn't just come down to understanding your target customer well, but also that's a piece of it. Obviously, you have to understand them, but it's also, not only what are they thinking in general and what do they value, but what are they thinking at that moment when they open your product? Like when they receive the package in the mail and they open the box or they open the package or whatever, like, depending on your product and depending on who you sell that product to, there is a very specific thing that individual may be thinking at that moment when they open the package, or feeling or wondering or questioning. And so if you can get in that mindset of what are they thinking at that moment, like maybe your product is something that's not necessarily super self-explanatory. So in that moment, they're thinking, okay, I just opened this up, I don't know what to do with it. So maybe it's an assembly video, maybe it's how to best use it. Maybe it's, how to trigger a snowflake, if you're selling to a millennial conservative, right? So it's one of those things that, you have to get in the mindset of what are they thinking in that very moment. I think that helps. And then, of course, obviously, the other thing, that Matt and I were talking about is, how do you make sure they have to interact with it? I received a product not too long ago, and there was a little insert card in there that had a QR code on it for me to scan. However, I didn't know it. Like I took the product out of the package. I never even noticed the insert card. I just happened to see it as I was about to throw away the package. And so I pulled it out and I scanned the code. But how many of their customers don't even notice that insert tag is there and don't scan it? I would say it's probably half. So now all of a sudden your response rate on that offer, whatever it is, I don't care how good the offer is half what it could be, maybe even less than that. And that might be enough for you to say it's not worth it. Whereas if you were getting the full response rate that the offer is worth anyways, then you might say, well, no, this is working pretty well. Maybe this is something that we should iterate on and we should split test,
Yeah. And I think that's, probably one of the obstacles for brands. And I guess I'd be curious to hear what your input is on this. Is it seems like the hard part about this is you really have to be thinking ahead when you're looking at this post-purchase process, especially if you're, looking at selling on Amazon or really anywhere where there's a long lead time, because in a lot of cases, if you have somebody else packaging your product, you have to have that insert ready and have them actually, apply that insert or hang tag or whatever it is that you're using. Or even, in the case of the water bottles, it might be something where you have to actually like incorporate it into the label where you have a QR code and, something enticing for people to scan. So, what are your guys' thoughts on how brands should think about kind of planning for this, post-purchase engagement with customers?
Well, I think in the early stages, if you don't, so this is something Matt and I were talking about in regards to this brand. Like there's an aspect of it where you don't necessarily know at the front end what is going to actually incentivize them enough to get the kind of response rate you're looking for. And so one of the things that you could do and probably should do is to keep the upfront offer generic. So in other words, you could say, scan this QR code for a mystery gift worth X number of dollars, right? And then you could have multiple different gifts that you test. Like they're all worth that same general amount. But then you, on your landing page, so they scan the QR code, goes to this landing page, and it's a split tested page. So each person gets a different page. Maybe there's 4 different items, right? Which one of those gets you the best response rate from the landing page? Well, once you know what that is, then it gives you a better idea of how to iterate further. Then you could take the insert and you could swap it out and actually put that item on there, or a generic description of that item, and then now you have 4 different ones that are different versions of that. Like, okay, it's this type of thing. We know that's what they want. Which specific version of it do they want? Is there a color variation? Is there a so I think ultimately split testing it is going to be the best road forward. And if you don't know, take a guess and take 4 different guesses, and split test it first. And keep it generic on the front end with the QR code, and just make sure that you give it a value. Don't just say scan here for a mystery gift. Scan here for a mystery gift worth X number of dollars. Something, at least give them a value that they can attach. That they can hang their hat on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, once you do some of that testing, you can really narrow down what's going to kind of move the needle without having to have 10,000 or 100,000 units that now have a certain sticker or something built into the design that you've got to run through packaging.
A couple other things on that. I think that one is, there may be other services, but there is a service out there that we're actually considering ourselves called SKU Drop. One of the things that SKU Drop actually helps with, it's almost a secondary thing, but at the same time, it's pretty useful. So SKU Drop is, they do your warehousing in China instead of warehousing here in the US. So whereas maybe you typically ship all of your items in and you store them in a staging warehouse in California or something, and then they go from there to an Amazon warehouse or other 3PLs or wherever you're sending stuff for fulfillment, SKU Drop reverses that. So they basically become your staging warehouse in China, and then they have fairly quick shipping into Amazon warehouses direct. But what it basically allows you to do then is their pricing, the way that their pricing structure works in terms of shipments, you don't have to send in quite as much inventory at a time to get an actually, pretty decent rate. So whereas you might currently be shipping from China in container loads and fairly large quantity in order to get a good price, not just from your manufacturer, but also on the actual cost of shipping, right? SKU Drop can give you a pretty similar price on a considerably smaller LCL shipment. So what ends up happening then is brands will ship smaller amounts at once, right? So maybe they'll ship every week or every 2 weeks instead of shipping every month or two. But what happens with that is you don't have to have as much inventory sitting at SKU Drop warehouses. Like you don't have to bring in a whole container at a time. You can order in smaller quantities from the factory, send them into SKU Drop, and then you're shipping in. So it gives you a better opportunity for turnover. So when you're doing testing, if you're split testing, you can have smaller batches going into SKU Drop with whatever the QR code or insert is that you have, and then you can change it out more quickly so that you don't have, like you said, an entire container of one particular insert that now you've got to sell through all of that before you can retest again.
That's a really good idea, actually, for people that want to, because I think a couple of things that I take away there. One, like you said, having that flexibility in your supply chain, especially when you're kind of figuring this out, is super important. So that way you don't have to wait, 6 months in order to do another test. And then the other thing is, really testing some different offers. I don't think for this particular brand, but there's other brands, we've worked with in the beauty space where like, a free birthday gift worked fairly well. Now, what was funny about that is everybody's birthday was about a week after they ordered the product. So
right, for sure, right?
How accurate that birthday was a whole other thing. But even though people felt like they were getting something out of it in that process, and were willing to give an email address, and ultimately got the company ended up getting what they wanted out of it.
One thing to be careful of too, most of the time, and I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again, and that is that because we think our product is so great, then we make the assumption that giving somebody a discount on their next order of our product is an amazing offer. Like maybe it's 50% off, whatever it is, which is a great discount, right? But if I don't actually know that I like your product yet, like I'm new to brand, right? I mean, if you're trying to get them on your list, chances are they're new to brand. So if they don't know they like your product, why on earth would they care that you're going to offer them 50% off the next order, right? So I don't think that's a good offer. And I think that's where a lot of Amazon sellers start, and it's where they stop with inserts. They assume that the post-purchase process just doesn't work for their product because they offered the biggest discount they could, feasibly offer, and they didn't get any response out of it. And I would say most times the reason you didn't get that response is because they don't even know that they want the discount. And by the time they do realize they like the product, they've already thrown the insert away. So, or lost it, or whatever. So don't ever start with that as being your insert, structure. If it's a discount on a future order, at least if you're going to do that, combine it with something else, whether it's a giveaway or mystery gift or whatever, like make sure there's some other reason for them to actually click that button and give you their email address.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen this play out, and I think that's an important point is that like, okay, like the discount off, again, it can work if it's a large amount and if it's for a product that is quickly consumable. So if it's something that they're going to use, in a week or over the course of a month where they're going to reorder, that can work a little bit better. But again, you're only going to get those customers that are interested in reordering, and they may not,
and who don't lose the insert card, and who all of these things that play into that process, right?
Well, and that's why I want to just double click on that giveaway, because it's not only, I think the way that you do it is really good as far as, and taking like your company as an example, where, it's a product of like, if I buy a pool, and again, a high quality one, I'm probably not buying one for a few years, and I may not need anything else for my pool. But if I'm entering that giveaway to win $1,000 worth of prizes, well, I can probably find, $1,000 worth of stuff to buy for my pool, for free. If I end up being the winner. So that part of it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's also important for, folks that are listening to this is that you don't have to start at $1,000. If you're a smaller brand and, you don't have a ton of volume yet, I mean, people are very happy to win $100 or $500, worth of free product as well. So, don't think that you have to have a huge prize in order to move the needle. And, also there's something kind of that people like about winning stuff even more than discounts. So even though it ends up costing you less in the long run, I think, most of the time what I see is a better opt-in rate from something like a giveaway, as opposed to just offering a discount. And of course, the best option is to see if you can, kind of combine 2 or 3 things together. So that way you can get, that best combination of things to really drive people opting into your email list and being able to build that relationship with them.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about in the past are like not even things that cost the brand any money. I mean, you can make relationships with other brands. I think one of the things that we were talking about maybe a couple of months ago, it was like, brands that were complementary but didn't offer anything, like you didn't sell anything that they were selling. So like if we take the barbecue my space, the barbecue accessory space, like if I partner with someone that made a barbecue sauce or made some sort of a dry rub or something like that, where it's a product that is a subscribe and save type of a product that this brand would be happy to give away 100 or 500 units of their barbecue sauce because they're giving it away to someone who's clearly interested in that category. So, I mean, you could even find things that don't cost you anything. It's just a partnership with another brand that they're offering something that you can put into your giveaway, the grand prize of your giveaway. Like, it doesn't have to be something that you paid for. Maybe it's a partnership. Maybe it's, something that someone else offers that doesn't really cost you a whole lot of money, but the perceived value is a lot higher.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the other thing is there's a lot of stuff in that spectrum, because the other thing that I think about in that case, Matt, that if you found the right partner, I wonder, I haven't found the right brand to test this with, but I wonder if you did like a free with shipping type thing. So that way the brand is not out, actually shipping the product, but the customer gets, say it's, one of their spice rubs or something like that, like one flavor for, $3-4 or whatever that costs to ship.
Well, and I think the other thing that's important there is like, if what you're giving away is a physical product, right? And we should back up, right? Like, there's two scenarios here in terms of what Matt's talking about. So either it's like a giveaway drawing, and so maybe, they're winning something, and maybe there's some partner company that you could partner with where, there's a larger giveaway, or it's everybody gets this item, like everybody who registers gets the item. In which case, if it's a physical product that has to be shipped out and not just like a discount or something, the one significant benefit that people don't think about is you're getting their physical address too. So then you have the opportunity for postcard mailings and any other kind of, thing that you might want to do, which, because that's kind of out of vogue right now, like, you actually probably would get better response rates out of that sort of thing than you might have, say 5 or 10 years ago when that was still kind of being done. Now it's not really being done so much. So having that physical address is kind of a big deal. So if there's a way for you to give away a physical item, that's kind of important. As an example, we don't give away a physical item, but again, warranty. If somebody's going to take advantage of a warranty, we're going to need their address because we're going to have to ship them something, right? Now, technically, we don't need that address until they actually file a claim. But interestingly for us, 90% of the people who actually register their warranty with us give us their physical address, even though it's not required. We ask for it, but we don't require it. They could submit it without it. And 90% of them provide us with that physical address when they register. So, it's something to think about if you want to use some additional, alternative options, let's say, for marketing to your customer base, that a lot of other businesses aren't doing these days.
Yeah. And again, I think this comes down to, the discussion that we had before about testing. And one thing I want to put in there is, you don't have to make the testing super complicated. I mean, we've done this with a static QR code where we just, change the forwarding address on it. So that way, we can A/B test different landing pages and that type of stuff. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this and really test, because in a lot of cases, you might have a good guess at what's going to work best. But I would say, at least for me, half the time I'm surprised, and the offer that I think is going to outperform ends up not doing as well as something that I would say, probably not going to work. So yeah, I'm always surprised,
and especially at the front end, right? As you get to know your brand and you get to know your audience better, that only comes through conversation with them, as they interact with you on social and as they respond to your emails, and you see which emails you get resonance with and which ones you don't. You start to learn the language, right? You start to learn that customer better. At the front end, you only know them in a very basic way. You might be able to suss out who you think that customer is and what their demographic profile looks like and all of that kind of thing. But you're not going to know them as well as you will 2 years down the road once you've had those interactions. And because you don't know them that well, it's a very good chance that the thing that you think is going to resonate with them isn't actually the thing that's going to resonate, which is why you want to test it. I think it's also important, like in this conversation, there's the high level thinking about it, right? In terms of, okay, try and know your audience, make sure that you're split testing it, put structures in place that allow you to iterate as quickly as possible through those testing phases. But there's also then, some of the practical, like nuts and bolts kind of things, like, one, make sure that whatever the insert is or hang tag or whatever it is, they have to interact with it in some way, as if you can. If there's a way make sure they have to interact with it. Secondly, like you were just mentioning, John, with the QR code, a lot of and we made this mistake too. So if you use a service out there that manages dynamic QR codes, in other words, so that you can change where that QR code is going to point at any time, then now you're locked into that service. You have to keep paying them monthly because now you've got those QR codes circulating out in the wild. And if you want to be able to change the address for them, you have to keep paying, right? So an alternative to that is, I don't know if Shopify has this, I assume they do, but like WordPress, there's free plugins for WordPress where you can basically create URLs on your domain and point them wherever you want and change where they go wherever you want. So what I would do, and this is what we do now, is we use that plugin. We set up a short, domain name with, a short extension on it. We have the QR code point there, and then we can go into our WordPress plugin anytime we want and change where that's being redirected to. So we don't have to continue to pay for a service to have a dynamic QR code, but we have the same result. And then you've got the question of, do I want a QR code? Do I want to use an NFC tag? Do I want to do, something, alternatively like that? That's a conversation to have and really to kind of think through.
Yeah. And I think, really it's about iteration. So if you're not doing anything right now, start somewhere. And then if you, once you got the basics, see what you can do in order to improve that, opt-in rate as you go. And I think, just as we wrap this up, what I would encourage people just to double click on is think about the offer, what you're offering now, if you do have, some sort of post-purchase process, and think about how you can make that offer even more powerful by, adding, kind of stacking those offers to make it just absolutely, a no-brainer for your customers to opt in. Because in almost every case, you're going to see, by combining offers, you're going to see a lot better opt-in rate than if you just have, one offer or one component trying to get those customers to engage with that opt-in.
And don't get discouraged if you don't have very good response rate at the beginning. That's the whole point of split testing. Don't forget that that's the whole point, right? And some of the split tests that you do, you may find that you double or triple the response rate. That's not a frequent thing, but it happens. So if you get a 5% response rate or even a 3% response rate, well, geez, that's still more emails than you had before, and you have somebody to market to. But don't expect that it's going to be, stay at 3%. As long as you continue to split test, it's going to get higher, and the higher it goes, the more value you have in that list. So,
and to give the listeners an idea of how high you can get that, Mike, what's your current opt-in rate for your offer now?
Our opt-in rate is closing in on 30% right now.
Which is, do the math on that. It's fascinating. And it took time. Like I think I remember from a previous conversation that when you made the QR code, the hang tag, like your opt-in rate skyrocketed once you figured that out. So, it's not going to be
when we did it as a hang tag that they had to remove in order to be able to actually use the product, we instantly doubled our registration rate.
Yeah. And I want to want to make sure that we keep sight of that when we talk about this process. At the end of the day, it's about building that powerful email list where now, Mike, you're adding tens of thousands of emails a year to your list that, we've talked about it before, that opens the gates to do, all kinds of things from product development to, driving sales to, engaging with that audience at a deeper level for purchases of other products that are, part of your brand that are complementary to maybe, some of your hero products, but have way better, margins than maybe what your hero product has. So it just opens up your capabilities as a brand once you have that relationship with your customers that is really hard to duplicate by, just having a listing on Amazon and relying on Amazon and Amazon ads in order to get in front of them.
Creates a lot of peace of mind too, honestly. If you're a seller and you don't have a list, every day, there is this looming, concern, what happens if Amazon shuts down this hero listing or shuts down my account, or whatever. And it's not as if that's not a concern, like it could still happen. But if I've got 35,000 people on an email list who all love my company and love my brand, like I can still make a living on that. I might not make as much as I make right now, being on Amazon, but I can still make good money with a list like that, if I treat them well. So it creates a lot of peace of mind, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons why we talk about this process and why we offer that free blueprint course on the after purchase funnel, so that way people can really start the ball rolling on this. If you're not already doing this, and see how you can start implementing this for your brand and really go from that zero to having a process in place, and see and start building from there, because we think it is so important for brands to have this.
For sure.
All right. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back next Tuesday with another Amazon Tactics Tuesday.